This whole mountain biking thing, well, it can get really expensive, especially if you're the kind of rider who's into the latest and fanciest gear. And now, there's nothing wrong with XTR or Axis or wanting a set of carbon wheels even, but you certainly don't need any of that stuff to have a good time. And we've already done a video explaining what to look at when buying a used bike.
$25 to $50 depending on the shop. They'll give it a good check over.
And I'll be back yet again to talk about buying used components. That's a smart way to save some money. But today, all we're gonna talk about is where to spend and where to save when upgrading your bike. All right, let's start off with the big one, where to save, and it's your frame. And that may come as a surprise to some people given that it's such an important component. I'm gonna assume that you're thinking about a full suspension bike, which means that you're gonna have to spend anywhere from $1,500 to even over $3,500. You can even spend over $5,000 on just a frame and shock if you wanted, depending on your needs, where it was made, and who made it, and what they say is special about it. But to pinch the pennies, definitely go aluminum. That's gonna cut $1,000 off the price right there. Aluminum frame, well, there's a good chance it's gonna be a bit heavier than a carbon frame, around a pound or so, maybe even a little bit more. So does an additional pound or so mean less performance? No, not in the real world for most people. What about reliability? Reliability. Generally, aluminum frames are thought to be more reliable than carbon frames. I got it that time. And that might be true if you live in a rocky place where those rocks, well, they can punch holes in carbon just as easily as they punch holes through your skin. All right, here's my advice. If you're not looking to spend a ridiculous amount of money to build up some flyweight bike, find yourself a nice aluminum frame that has the geometry and the warranty that works for you. That's far more important than whether it's made of carbon or aluminum or whether it weighs 5 pounds or 6.5. Let's stick with saving money, and next up, it's wheels. Now, you shouldn't have to spend more than around $400 or $500 for something that's gonna be reliable and has the right width rim. You could spend way less than that, of course, but a lot of times those rims are very skinny and they don't work that well with today's high volume tires. And just like with your frame, there are a bunch of companies that would like you to spend a ton of money on carbon rims. And yeah, some of those carbon wheels, they can be super reliable, but in the end, they're all gonna cost you more than a reasonably priced aluminum wheel set that you can fix on your own at home, thereby saving even further money. Next up, let's talk hubs as well, since we're talking about wheels. And you can also spend a ton of money on hubs, of course. There are hubs out there that are $300, $400, $500, and talk about things like fast engagement and fancy bearings and all this stuff. You don't need any of it. Find a hub that you can rebuild on your own, that takes normal bearings and that doesn't require any special tools. Hopefully that's at the center of your wheel set that costs around $400 or $500. Let's talk about where to spend money now, and it's on your brakes. For those, you're gonna end up spending maybe a little bit under $100 to around $180. Sure, you could buy those $35 cable actuated disc brakes. You're probably not gonna have a good time, and you might not even survive. At the same time, you don't need to spend $1,000 an end on some handmade German Wunder brakes that they spend 2 months polishing before they send to you, despite those brakes being very impressive. Less money means you're gonna get fewer adjustments. Now, everything is still gonna have a reach adjustment. You might have to use an Allen key to do it, a tiny little Allen key, but what you won't be getting is a bite point adjustment if you don't spend more money, and that's helpful in making your brakes feel the same front to back. But if you're looking for a bare bones powerful brake set, look for an inexpensive 4-piston brake. Where to save money? Well, on a dropper post, which is gonna cost you around $200. Now that sounds like a lot of money, but you could spend way more than that, and things are way better these days as well. It used to be you'd spend $500 and basically hope that the thing would keep working, which eventually didn't. The good news, there are a handful of companies offering really reliable seat posts that even when they break, they can be fixed for relatively cheaply. Companies like OneUp, SDG, Xfusion, and Pacific Northwest Components all offer great dropper posts that won't break the bank. Where to spend some money? Well, your suspension fork is gonna cost you anywhere between $500 to $800 to get you something that's gonna be worth considering as an upgrade. Now, you could spend way more than that and get fancy gold stanchion tubes or carbon fiber components and way too many dials that you'll probably forget you even have and never end up turning. Look at the fork that's 1 or 2 steps down from the most expensive option. Usually you're still getting the high performance damper or something at least that's related to it, and that's what counts the most. My advice is to check out that $500 Z2 with the rail damper. It can be had in 100 millimeters up to 150 millimeters of travel and is a great choice if you're not looking to spend $1,000 on a suspension fork. Where to save some money? Well, your drivetrain, which should cost you way under $500. If you look at a new mountain bike that's 1 or 2 steps down from the fanciest model, it'll often have high-end suspension or fancy wheels, but a relatively inexpensive drivetrain. That's because your drivetrain doesn't matter. I'm just joking. But if it's adjusted right and you have 12 speeds and you have a wide enough range, well, that means that you have all the things that you need to get up the mountain and get down the mountain and to have a good time. Let's talk Shimano first, and their 12-speed DR group has been massively impressive and reliable. You can get the whole thing for less than $300, although the microspline free hub will add a couple bucks to that as well. On to SRAM, where their 375 USD NX drivetrain won't break the bank. And if you don't need all those cogs, well, you could spend way less money. Microshift just released their $83 Acolyte drivetrain. It's an 8-speed single ring drivetrain, and the derailleur uses a clutch that has an off switch, so you can disengage it to make getting the wheel off easier. You have 2 cassette options. It either goes from 12 to 42 or 12 to 46, so you can still get a reasonably wide range to ride up most hills. Where to save some money? Well, your cockpit, which shouldn't cost you more than 150 American dollars, including the touch points. And I know that you could spend way more money on just a stem that's been machined by leprechauns under a full moon, or you could spend $35 on a stem that does the same thing and weighs 7 grams more. Whatever. Same goes for handlebars. You could spend $200 or more than that to get something made out of carbon fiber that's light and claims to offer some sort of
vibration damping properties.
Or you could spend $50 to $70 to get a nice aluminum handlebar with the geometry that you need from a reputable company, and there you go. All right, everybody, there's our advice on where to spend your money on components that won't hold you back and that will also be reliable. Let us know in the comments below if you agree with what we recommended or if we're out to lunch. Now, you don't have to spend more than $400 or $500 to get something that's reasonably, not reasonably, to get something that's reliable